Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this first Zoom call we've had in quite a while. For those of you I might not have had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Adrian Finley. I'm the director here at Music Worcester, and I am joined tonight by our artistic director of the Worcester Chorus, the very distinguished Chris Shepard, and I will give him the microphone, as it were, in just a second. I just wanted to say a few things about why we're here and why we are hosting this exceptional Zoom gathering this evening. We have, as you probably have more than been able to tell, an announcement to make. And we wanted to first share it with supporters, subscribers, longtime patrons, in advance of it going public later this spring. And this is a public announcement that will largely be in line with our season announcement for next year. Music Worcester may have 16 plus decades of history presenting concerts. We were started here in Worcester in 1858, and we began performing at Mechanics Hall a year after it opened to the public. We indeed started as a choral festival. The Worcester Chorus has been part of Music Worcester since the very beginning, that first day in 1858. For many of those decades, we were a week-long festival. We had several years, more than several years actually, at the Worcester Auditorium. And I know some of you with us tonight go back to those festival auditorium days. We became a seasonal presenter in the 70s, and we remain largely active during the fall, winter, and spring parts of the year. In 1996, there was a merger, a three-part merger of the former festival, the International Artist Series, and the Mass Jazz Festival to form Music Worcester as we know it today. We activate cultural spaces around the city of Worcester very often, if not most often, Mechanics Hall, Tuckerman Hall, the Hanover Theater, and increasingly the JMAC, the Gene McDonough Arts Center. And we have also recently pushed out into the region, Webster, Indian Ranch, Shrewsbury, the J Performing Arts Center at St. John's, and Auburn as well, the Riley Pappas Pavilion. So why do I say all of this when so much of what I've just said is known so well to so many of you? Today's announcement is going to change Music Worcester for the next decade and then some. For the first time ever, we are going to have a thematic approach to our programming. We have a project to share with you today that acknowledges and furthers Music Worcester's renown as a presenter of world-famous artists, most certainly, but this is also a project that will have Music Worcester creating a gathering space through performance for our area colleagues. So, Chris, I am going to turn it over to you for the big news, but I just wanted to share with everyone that you may know Chris Shepard from being on the podium so often at Mechanics Hall. He has led the Worcester Chorus for 15 years. He has certainly brought it to new artistic heights. He is also an amazing pianist. Some of you may remember the cabaret show that he shared the stage of Mechanics Hall with. Program first half was Carmina Burana, second half was cabaret with him playing all the music. He is a renowned Bach scholar, having written his doctoral dissertation indeed on the B minor Mass. And he leads two other choral groups at present as well, Concord in Hartford, Connecticut, and the Masterwork Chorus of New Jersey in Morristown. So I think, Chris, without further ado, I am going to mute myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian, and hello, everybody. It's weird to do a Zoom where I don't see anybody, but I will assume that you are all out there smiling. Speaking of smiling, I am in another job that Adrian didn't mention is I'm a church organist, much as Johann Sebastian was, but not nearly like him. And I looked up on the mantelpiece over the fireplace in my office, and who did I see sitting there but this guy? And I think that this is a good sign. This is Johann Sebastian Bach. We are wishing him a happy birthday today. I should, because we have such intelligent followers at Music Worcester, I have been reminded, and I should probably say very quickly, lest I be remiss, that there is a little bit of controversy over Bach's birthday. We have come over the centuries to celebrate it on March 21st, and we will continue to do that. But in fact, it's actually March 31st, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but it's quite interesting. It has to do with the fact that Europe changed from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar right around when Bach was born. And so his birthday literally changed. I suppose it's like being born in a leap year and only getting to celebrate a birthday every 4 years. But happy birthday, or if you are a purist, happy birthday in 10 days. And if you have poured yourself some kind of a drink at home in celebration of this, you might want to take a sip of that, because we have news for you that is so unbelievable that I still, even a year into the planning, can't quite believe that we are going to do this. Now, I'm going to give you a lot of information tonight, and I need to tell you all of it is online, and we have a webpage that is going to open after this meeting. So everything you need to know is there. But because you are our special supporters and patrons, we wanted to just give you kind of the full frontal of this project, just so you can know what's going to happen. If you have your calendar open, I would like you to turn to March 21st, 2035, because that is when this project is going to end. For the next 11 years, in 12 concerts a year, 132 concerts, Music Worcester is going to bring to all of you in Worcester and beyond everything that Bach ever wrote. Now, we think, and it's a little difficult to confirm this, but we think that almost certainly we will be the first organization in America ever to present this music live. And we might, I mean, this is so extraordinary, we might actually be the first people in the world ever to perform all of this live. The Netherlands Bach Society is in the midst of an extraordinary project, and I think you should just have their tab open on your browser all the time. They have done a lot of recording, some live, some recording, and they are in the midst of it. It's just extraordinary that we are doing this, and I just want to thank Adrian for this opportunity. Believe it or not, it wasn't my idea, only because I'm not that audacious. But I think it is a terrific idea. Many of you know that when I lived in Sydney, Australia, I founded a choir and orchestra that performed all of the choral cantatas, that is, the non-solo cantatas. More on that later. And that group performed 142 of those pieces. And the trick to knowing who could possibly do everything is to know who has done all the cantatas. And even that club is really quite a small one. So this is amazing for Worcester, amazing for Massachusetts, amazing for New England. And we are poised, that intro that Adrian gave you, that shows you that we are poised to do this in a way that almost no other organization could, because we have, I love to refer to it as the appendix, the vestigial organ of the of Music Worcester is the Worcester Chorus. They will be heavily involved. That allows us to do a lot of the choral music, but also because we bring in really major performers, and more on that later, we're able to have this whole panoply. Now, let me break this down for you. And again, everything is online, but I just wanted to be able to have all of this in one place. 12 concerts a year. Now, for you Bach fans at home, I wonder if you're going to be surprised in the same way that I was. I knew that Bach wrote a lot of choral music. And in a little bit, Adrian is going to play a video that I made at Trinity Lutheran Church, because of course Bach was not just a Lutheran, but the Lutheran. And I knew that he wrote a lot of choral music, but even I didn't realize that if each of these concerts is, say, the length of a CD, the length of a compact disc, for those of you who remember what those things were, then of the 12 concerts a year, 7 of them are vocal music. 4 of them are concerts of sacred choral cantatas. 2 of them are concerts of sacred solo cantatas. And then 1 concert is either secular cantatas or a major work. You just heard a bit of the B minor Mass, for example. So that's already 7/12 of a season. What is left? Well, if you think about this guy, in his lifetime, he was not famous as a composer. He was famous as an organist, and I wouldn't necessarily say an organ builder, but he worked with organ builders because he knew so much about the instrument. And of course, he was just a superb harpsichordist. So of those 12 concerts, 7 are vocal, 3 of them each year will be keyboard. 1 organ concert, 1 keyboard concert, either harpsichord or piano. And then depending on, as we go down the list of everything that needs to be checked off, either or a combination of both. So that takes us to 10 concerts. And this might surprise you as much as it surprised me, even though I've lived with this repertoire my entire life. Of the non-keyboard instrumental music, there's really only 2 concerts a year. One is the chamber music, and that can include things like the solo music for solo cello, for solo violin, for solo flute, for solo viola da gamba. There are all those. And then as chamber music, the combinations that you think of as chamber music, things like Art of the Fugue, Musical Offering. So that's one concert out of the 12 each year. And then there is only, and it's a bit of a shame because even though I can't see your faces, I know I saw a ton of you when Handel Haydn, that I refer to as H&H, did the Brandenburg Concerti last year. I say it's a shame because those concerts are always really popular. One concert a year will be that orchestral music. So as you will see on the website, I've outlined this is the way that it will work for 11 years. Can you imagine this? 7 vocal concerts a year, 3 keyboard concerts a year, 1 chamber music, and 1 orchestral. And also, just if you will see today, I can't not throw in little tidbits about Bach. But even those quote unquote orchestral concerts are almost always concertos, particularly for keyboard. And there it is. Thank you for putting that up, Adrian. So that is the outline of it. But now you're thinking, how can Music Worcester do what Music Worcester does, bringing in all these wonderful performers of different genres and still add all this Bach? Well, there are a few reasons. One is that we, in the Complete Bach, which is the name of this project, will borrow from some of those main stage performances. We'll share them throughout the years. But also, we have 2 events through the year that really will make this happen. And I want to do a big shout out now to Kathy Gagney, who is the executive director of Mechanics Hall. For many, I don't know if you know this in Worcester, it's what's the expression? A prophet is without honor in his own country. You may not know that Mechanics Hall is famous throughout the country for the beauty of not just the space, but the acoustics. And we have major performers like Yo-Yo Ma, Boston Baroque in Boston, that record there. So we really wanted to use mechanics as much as possible. Amazingly enough, Kathy went through the calendar with her staff, and they have blocked out 2 weekends for us every year, which means you need to block out 2 weekends for us every year. The last weekend of October, and the weekend that is closest to Bach's birthday. This time next year, we will just be kicking off a weekend. In October, and I stole these shamelessly, so give me no credit for these, but they're good names. In October, it is Bachtoberfest, and in March, it is the Bach Birthday Bash. And the great thing about doing it like that, few things. One is that for those of you who really want to check off, and you'll see the wonderful logo that our Ethan Bates designed for us. It is the outside of it is the logo that the crest, family crest that Bach himself designed with a crown over it. But what Ethan has done has to put a check mark in the middle of it. And that is just this idea that, and there it is, that as we go through the project, you will want to have a check mark. We are looking to get a Bach passport for you so that you can check them just like a visa at a border. And as to make that easier for you, these 2 weekends mean you just set that aside, come down to Mechanics Hall and see a whole bunch of different concerts. We want to make Worcester a destination. It is a city that is on the rise. I've been here 15 years, and it's incredible how it's changing. And we want to show people this extraordinary heritage that we have in Worcester, these beautiful buildings. And to that end, we've got Mechanics as a major partner, obviously the jewel of Tuckerman Hall for small concerts. We have these glorious churches. We're going to talk about that later because you can't do Bach without church, because Bach's life was so centered around working in churches. The gorgeous Worcester Art Museum, and they're in the midst of renovating an old organ that they have, which is great, but also quirky little spaces. We're going to do, for those of you who like merchandise, then you're going to want to come down next September to Redemption Rock brewery. And because we know that Bach loved coffee, we're going to kick off the merchandise launch by singing the coffee cantata. Pretty sure he liked beer as well. So we're going to have 2 Bach brews that you can buy, a Bach coffee brew and a Bach beer brew, which is perfect, of course, for Bachtoberfest. So we want all these unsung spaces throughout Worcester to be part of this. Worcester is a key player in this project. The performers in Worcester are also really key to this. I've mentioned the Worcester Chorus, obviously, but we're only one of many choirs that are going to be part of an organization that we have called the Worcester Bach Collective. And I'm particularly excited about this because I love my colleagues. I've gotten to know them over the years. And I don't know if you know this, but we're really lucky. We're batting way above our weight here in Worcester with really superb conductors, organists in these superb spaces. So in this Worcester Bach Collective are some community choirs, some church choirs, some college choirs, and many of you will have heard Pam Mendel's Worcester Children's Choir. Bach taught at his school. His last 27 years, he taught at the Thomas School, the St. Thomas School. So you've got to have kids involved. That's the Worcester Bach Collective, and they will be part of this large umbrella group that will present these many cantatas. And I can tell you, it's a lot of work, and it's nice to share it. First time I did it, we did it all ourselves, but how wonderful to share it throughout the community. And then we have partner organizations, just one rung out from the Worcester Bach Collective. I conduct a wonderful professional choir in Hartford, Concora, Connecticut choral artists. They will kick off Bachtoberfest every year with those professional level cantatas that are really quite difficult to sing. Emmanuel Church in Boston has been doing a cantata every Sunday since 1970. We have a long relationship with their soloists, whom I absolutely love working with. Their orchestra will be joining us for the kickoff with the B minor Mass. What a thrill that will be for all of us, and their soloists for that. Well, every year they will bring some of their cantatas over for a concert of solo cantatas largely. I mentioned H&H. We've had them a number of times. They will be coming next year, in fact. I'll tell you more about that in a second. World-class period ensemble. And another wonderful new period ensemble closer to home, which is led by Andrew Arkechi, this superb double bass player and gambist up in northern Worcester County in Winchendon, the Winchendon Chamber Players. I would like to say you've heard enough from me. You haven't heard enough from me, but you've heard enough from me in this venue. I'm going to ask Adrian to play a 5-minute video that sort of goes a little bit more into detail about the project itself. These videos, by the way, there are a number of them that are on our website. We've done this not just for you, but so that you can share the website with others, and all the information will sit there. So over to you, Adrian.
We have talked about Bach's instrumental music, but to talk about his choral music, I've come to a church. And not just any church. This is Trinity Lutheran Church in Worcester. And that's very important because a major part of Bach's personality, his upbringing, and his career was his relationship to the Lutheran Church. And in order to understand his choral output, it's important to understand an aspect of the Lutheran Church service, particularly in the city of Leipzig, where he worked for the last 27 years of his life. In each of those Sunday services, there was at the heart of the service a piece called a cantata, which comes from the Italian to sing. These cantatas were 20, 25 minutes long, though there are some much longer ones. And Bach, in one period of his life, after he moved to Leipzig, composed, copied out, rehearsed, and presented one cantata each Sunday. It is thought that he may have written as many as 300 in all, but there are only about 200 cantatas surviving. So because they're 20 to 25 minutes in our concerts, we will present 3 cantatas for each concert. I should say these pieces are particularly dear to my heart because when I lived in Sydney, Australia, I formed a choir and orchestra that performed all of the choral cantatas. And I'm so excited to revisit some of these works here in Worcester. So remember what I said. There were 5 instrumental concerts, 7 choral concerts a year. We could dispense with one of those 7 by saying that that concert each year will be one of Bach's major works, the St. Matthew Passion, the St. John Passion, the B minor Mass, the Christmas Oratorio, or in rotation, secular cantatas, not cantatas for the church, but similar pieces that he wrote for different occasions, for a boss's birthday, for example, because what better way to get in with your boss than to write an eternal piece that is dedicated to his birthday. But the other 6 concerts a year are those sacred cantatas. 2 of them are for solo performers. And here we're so lucky to have the musicians from Emmanuel Music in Boston because they can do one of those performances. They will just bring over some cantatas that they have sung in their own services that year. And then for the other solo cantata concert, we have so many wonderful soloists from the area who we will be able to focus on. And accompanying them will be either the Worcester Chamber Music Society or other wonderful musicians, instrumentalists from the area. Now, what about those other 4 sacred choral cantata concerts? This is where the Worcester Bach Collective comes in. This is where we are so lucky to have such wonderful choirs in the area. Choirs from our terrific colleges. Worcester is a college town, after all. Choirs from our churches, like Trinity Lutheran, where they are led by my colleague, Mark Mummert, who is in fact one of the country's great experts on Bach's musical theology. And he, for many years, taught about that at one of the country's most prominent Lutheran seminaries. So we're so lucky to have that connection. And then the many community choirs in town, not just the Worcester Chorus, but our colleague ensembles as well. The Worcester Children's Choir, because Bach worked with children. He taught at the Thomas School in Leipzig for those 27 years, so we want to involve some younger singers as well. And finally, for those more complex cantatas, because some of them are very complex, we turn to Concora, my professional choir from Hartford. So each year you will have 4 different cantata concerts in a wide variety of venues, different churches, maybe Mechanics Hall as well, and also some opportunities for those of you who are choral singers in Worcester, but beyond, or even internationally, to join us occasionally to prepare some of those cantatas. And if you are watching this video from somewhere far beyond Worcester, in America, in North America, in Europe, in Asia, my friends in Australia, over the years, we want to hear from you. And if you are going on tour to the Northeast, include us. Come give one of those cantata concerts in a year so that we can truly expand this idea of the extended Bach family.
Boy, that guy really gets so excited every time he talks about Bach, doesn't he? And I'm glad that I mentioned that last bit, because what I'm really hoping is that the word of mouth, as this grows, every time I've been sort of prepping all my friends in New York and in Australia and beyond about this project, and we're allowed to really get this word of mouth out. They're so excited about this. And the idea that if Eugene, Oregon, which is where Helmut Rilling started the Oregon Bach Festival, could become a Bach center, why can't Worcester, Massachusetts also become a Bach center? We need not be at all shy about who we are. I should also say that Bachtoberfest weekend will finish with a choir of singers from all over the place. We'll have rehearsals that weekend. I will generally lead that so I can can meet everybody. So tell your friends who are in choirs elsewhere, and we'll figure out hotel accommodations, and they can come and sing. So we did the Circle of Music Worcester, then the Circle of the Worcester Bach Collective. But what about these phenomenal guest ensembles and soloists who come every year to perform for Music Worcester? We're in the midst of many negotiations, so I won't mention any future groups, but everybody so far has said, yes, it's just a matter of making it all work. But I can tell you, what about our wonderful soloist, Simona Dinnerstein, a Bach pianist whom I love. I just had coffee with her in Brooklyn last week, and we talked about our future plans with her. Ian Watson, phenomenal keyboard player and conductor, who is associate conductor with H&H, will be with us next season. Vijay Gupta, we heard him play Bach earlier this year, superb musician. So we're going to have so many really, really top-tier musicians come through here. If you want to learn more about Bach, boy, do we have something for you. One of my roles as artistic director, if it doesn't kill me, is to make a podcast for every single concert, 132 podcasts. So sort of like program notes ahead of the concert rather than with it. We're going to call that Unlocking Bach. And then Chat JSB, Johann Sebastian Bach. Chat JSB, which is like, you can see Adrian and me here. Well, imagine little chats, me talking either to somebody, like if Simone is going to come and play the Goldberg variations, she and I would have a little conversation about that so that you can hear many other voices, not just mine. And I'm just irrepressible when I talk about Bach. And then finally, Bach 101. So that all those little bits of information that you may not have picked up over the years, like, for example, when I say that you should know what an allemande, courant, sarabande, and jig, the four major dance forms in a suite. What are those? Well, there will be this Bach 101 library of podcasts, so you can go and bone up on your Bach, as it were. The philosophy of this project, I think, is really quite unique. We are living in a time where it is okay to do Bach in a number of different ways. There have been times over the last 50 years where that wasn't true. There was a time in the 1980s and 90s where if you performed Bach on modern instruments or with a large choir, for example, you would get a terrible review in the New York Times. But we are in a time of a cultural détente, and we want to take advantage of that. So yes, you can hear the Worcester Chorus do the B minor Mass, but you can also hear 4 professional soloists with 1 per part players on period instruments do some of the early cantatas, for example. We will also have Bach jazz, some dance events with Bach. We want it to be a broad tent because we know that, although I do believe that if dragged to the pond, every horse will drink Bach in, but of course, I'm a bit of an evangelist. In the meantime, let's try to make this as easy for people to be a part of as possible. I'm also very interested in transcriptions, in music that Bach wrote that can be played on different sorts of instruments. When you hear these things in different guises, it opens your ears in new ways. Let me finish up by talking about next season, because it is this is the miracle. This is the miracle of this guy, that it all worked out. Knock on wood, because this is like a Rubik's Cube trying to make this work. But everybody has said yes, and all the dates have worked. So let me just give you a little bit of a teaser. All of this is on the website, so you can see. And I talked, for example, about the fact that there are 7 vocal concerts, choral and solo. I told you about at Redemption Rock, so we'll have some solo cantatas there. The Worcester Chamber Music Society, just such a fantastic ensemble. They have given us their annual December concert so that we can co-present some solo cantatas there. Those other 4 choral cantatas, next year, we're trying to show off as many groups as possible. So you will hear almost all the choirs of the Worcester Bach Collective. You will hear Concora, you will hear the Worcester Chorus, you will hear the Worcester Children's Choir, and the Bachtoberfest, which will begin, and we'll have information out about that you personally might be interested in singing in that. And then remember, I said we have this embarrassment of riches with organists, and we will be showing them all off, our terrific Worcester organists over the years, but we can't have everybody all at once. We do have Mark Mummert, you just saw his church, the Lutheran Church, and Wesley Hall at First Baptist. Little shout out to Wesley, who is a particular lover of the music of Buxtehude. And when we finish doing all Bach in 11 years, then we'll start all of Buxtehude, and you'll really love the North German music. They will do an organ recital. Peter Krasinski, who is just an extraordinary musician, but also just an extraordinary figure. He, by the way, if you saw The Holdovers, the new movie, which I recommend, he's conducting the choir, the school choir at the very beginning of that movie. And Peter's something of a showman, and he is just as evangelistic about Bach as I am. So he is the new organist at Mechanics Hall, that just extraordinary hook organ. He is going to combine two of his great loves, Bach and silent movies. He is a silent movie organist. And so he's going to do a concert that has multimedia strewn through it. And then finally, our three headliners for next year. I mentioned the solo Bach cello suites. Vladimir Fung, who is not a stranger to the Worcester area, and his career is absolutely on the ascendance. He's going to come and play all of those. Jeremy Dank, superb pianist, superb Bach pianist, will be playing all of the partitas. And then Ian, who I mentioned, who also, full disclosure, is just a great friend of mine because he's a wonderful colleague. Ian will play with some of his colleagues the the double harpsichord concerti with H&H in Mechanics Hall. One last thing I want to say, because I don't want to open this particular Pandora's box because it's a much longer discussion. One of the most extraordinary thing about Bach's capacious brain is that he was, by his very nature, encyclopedic. And that is actually why it's a figure like Bach or a figure like Shakespeare, for example, that we turn to, that we want to experience the gestalt of their entire opus because they encapsulated everything. So with Bach, for example, he wrote B minor Mass is a great example of this. There, in every movement represents every kind of music, including Gregorian chant, for example, that had ever existed. And so he filters that through his prism, and then that music goes out. And then after him, other composers, most composers, write somehow in response to things that Bach has done. Bach was all about collecting music. He was an inveterate collector. And so, by and large, the way that we're going to do these concerts, which will be challenging on one level, but I think just absolutely inspiring on another, is that when it's the 6 partitas for keyboard, we'll do all 6. The 6 cello suites for cello, we'll do all 6. And they can be awfully big meals, and we'll figure out ways to have like a long intermission with some food in between. But we really want you to experience, like I say, what I think of as the capacious brain of Johann Sebastian Bach. Like if this were to be done to scale, his head would be like this, and his body the way that it is. That he was one of the geniuses in the Western world. And I'll just finish by saying, the chance for all of us to experience live the entire intellectual, musical, and artistic outlook of a single figure like Bach, this is just extraordinary. So my thanks to Adrian for having had a crazy idea. My thanks to the Board of Music Worcester for saying, let's do this. I can think of almost no organization that could do something like this. Maybe a college, but a college would have to do it over different generations of students, so it would lose some of its effectiveness. All you have to do is stick around. Don't move out of Worcester. Don't get sick or die or anything like that. You've got 11 years, you and I together, to experience all of this. And I hope that we look back on this day, March 21st, 2024, as the kickoff of something that will possibly not be repeated for a century anywhere else. So thank you for that. Adrian.
Oh, well, thank you, Chris. Oh, gosh, I already feel like I need a nap, but so much to look forward to. And as everyone's heard, the technology piece of this is pretty extraordinary. Music Lister will be able to get into territories that we've only dreamt of till now, and the podcasts are just the beginning. There's such amazing educational and community engagement opportunities here. So I just wanted to end with two thank yous. First, and I believe he's with us right now, a huge shout out to Mark Mummert, the Associate Director of the Chorus, and for just being such a proponent of this idea since he first heard of it, and for his being such a pillar of support.
Adrian, as I like to say, my only role with Mark is not to stand in front of him, in front of an open window and export over the next 11 years. Because Mark, I know that you would love to do this as much as I do. So I'm just so lucky to have a colleague like you.
Thank you, Mark. And to end, and then I'll put a little bit more music on as we all hit the leave button there, the end button. I just wanted to give a huge thank you to Ruth Westheimer. This period coming up, this next 11 years, Chris is indeed taking on a second position, as it were, with Music Lister. And thanks to Ruth, his position as director of the Complete Bach project here at Music Lister is indeed the Ruth Susan Westheimer artistic director of the Complete Bach project. So many thanks, Ruth. We couldn't do it without you.
And if you want to join her in having anything named after you, there will be plenty of opportunities for philanthropy over the next 11 years. Was I supposed to say that, Adrian? Is that okay?
You took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you soon.